back with another edition of SVG on the Man. We're speaking with the Minnesota Twins man, the man up north. I have a pleasure to speak with Sam Henschen. He's the director of game day experience for the Minnesota Twins. Sam, we'll get into how great your team is and how they're rivaling the Yankees as one of the most powerful lineups in baseball. But how is yourself doing? How's your team doing? Your staff? How's everything going up in Minnesota?
It's been going really good. So basically, we were like everybody else when we were thrown this, to use a baseball pun, this curveball of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so since March, it's been just kind of what's going to happen this week, both with what the players and the owners with getting a deal done to what the schedule was going to be, what the games are going to be like. So it's really been kind of, all right, let's handle it week by week. And as we got to the opening day, we decided that, all right, we're ready to go. So.
Okay, great. So we'll start there before we go into all the elements of the video board and the most talked about crowd sound. When you were told that it was a 60-game season and Major League Baseball said, hey, you have to do the crowd sound and there won't be fans, how did you use the summer camp or the spring training 2.0, what have you, to kind of make sure everyone was on the same page?
Yeah, so even kind of a couple weeks before that, we defined kind of 4 areas that we wanted to focus on, knowing that there'd be no fans and a truncated season. So, and staffing would be limited and social distancing. So all those things thrown into it, we defined kind of 4 areas we need to take care of. One was just the typical stuff of a baseball game. You got to make sure the score is up there, the ball strikes out, all the baseball information so that both the teams can understand what's going on and the broadcasters and media, things like that. As well as we had to make sure that we took care of our sponsorships. So we rearranged our whole digital display sponsorship pattern. You know, when we have fans, it's one way, but now we're basically producing a sponsorship show for TV. So what signage shows up best on TV that maybe was an out-of-town scoreboard before or a stat graphic before? Can we put a giant corporate logo up there instead so that the sponsorship can get a little bit back on their return on investment? The third thing was to make sure the players felt as normal as possible. And we'll touch base on that with crowd noise in a bit, but it's also things like seeing headshots of themselves or seeing hype videos about themselves or seeing replays of big home runs or even things as simple as like, what's going on around the league? You know, is it who's hit the longest home run? Did Aaron Judge hit another 470-foot home run? Or did Orlando Arcia make a great diving play? Just to kind of, because they're up to date on all that stuff with their peers across the league. And we also want to keep an out-of-town scoreboard up there because, again, with the truncated season, each game is worth like 2.7 games compared to a regular season. So the games are much more important, especially as we get into late August, September. What's happening around the league is going to be very, very closely watched as teams kind of get ready to get into postseason play. So that was the third thing, making sure players kind of feel normal. And we'll talk about crowd sounds, like I said, in a bit. And then the fourth thing was how to incorporate our fans. And so we've done a couple small things. We've done some Zoom watch parties. We've recorded some meetings like this one where we have 25 to 30 season ticket holders and we ask them to kind of pantomime cheering or do a home run cheer or do a Twins chant that we do at the game. And we're incorporating that into our show to give the players a little bit of sense of, yep, there are people watching, as well as, you know, obviously it's us at the stadium. So once we kind of define those 4 tenets, that's kind of what we used as our plan going forward.
Right. Okay.
And then, this is a long-winded way of getting to the answer of summer camp. Baseball is the one sport that doesn't get the luxury of having home games before the regular season starts at your own ballpark, like all the other sports. And so it really was kind of a godsend in some ways where it's like, all right, we have this less of a staff. We're going to run all our elements like we normally do, you know, but let's try this out. Maybe we need to shift people around. Maybe this person does this additional job instead of that other additional job. And frankly, since we're not adhering to fans anymore and we're just adhering to the players, I think we did about 4 or 5 scrimmages where we kind of had a full production going on. It changed from game 1 to game 5 with the players, whether it was turn up the audio to make the crowd noise softer, make the crowd noise louder. You know, when the cheering happened, the cheering wasn't loud enough. We really just listened to them and said, hey, hit us with what you want. You know, we're only adhering to you guys. So if it's really, really loud in the upper deck, we don't care because we know on the field it's exactly the volume we want. Where if fans were in the stadium, we'd obviously have to play the balancing act between that. So summer camp really became a nice way for us to kind of get everything kind of figured out and get it as best we could for the players when the real game started.
Right. Okay. So we'll jump into the fake crowd noise, and we joked earlier about how you guys have a stacked lineup with guys like Miguel Sano and Max Kepler and Nelson Cruz, the boomstick. Do you guys get tired of pressing that home run button on your iPad? And plus, how do you make sure you can go a little bit deeper into making sure that you're catering to the players on the field, but also since you're supplying it for your RSNs and for the broadcast, how have you like kind of towed that fine line to make sure you're catering to both?
Yeah. So when we received the iPads from MLB regarding all the crowd noise stuff, we have our audio engineers. So the guy who runs our audio board are the folks who actually run our crowd noise. So it's kind of a dual job for them. But they took those iPads and really went through each button that was provided to us and worked on, hey, if I play this here, is it too abrupt? Should I bring the fade in longer, fade out slower? To go through each button. We kept the generic crowd noise. We put that on one channel, so that's just always there, both for the TV truck or whoever else wants it, the radio broadcast. So that's always there. And then all these crowd noise, we're playing off a separate channel to kind of mix it in so it sounds as natural as possible. And like I said before, we kind of played with like, well, how loud should the cheers be? How often should we cheer? And we're trying to figure out that balance of also if you're 2 seconds late, like if a guy strikes out and the cheer happens 3 seconds later, just don't do it.
Right.
And learning those type of things too. Like if you just don't hit the button soon enough or the button misfires, like don't do it later because we're trying to be as authentic as possible. So sometimes nothing is better than something if you're late to the gun. And in terms of the players, we've kind of developed this philosophy of player music, where between innings we're playing songs that the players would maybe like, more so than trying to cater to 18 to 65-year-olds in the crowd. And then we've also been incorporating a lot of music between pitches as well. So where before we used to maybe have an organ music play or nothing, we're playing music and we're actually having the players pick what music they want to hear. So some players, obviously every player has a walk-up song. Some players want to hear that same song between each pitch.
All right.
And then the other guys were just kind of playing some other pump-up tracks just to kind of get them pumped up. The player feedback that we got was they wanted to treat it like almost like an NBA game where there's just music constantly.
Right.
Felt that would kind of help them as batters, and so we've kind of incorporated that into our game presentation to kind of see how that's worked. And I think we're 7-1 at home so far, so maybe it's been working. If we feel like there's a ability for us to influence that or not, but the players seem to like that kind of mode of operation. So we'll see how long we continue it.
Right. Okay. You alluded to a little bit about the video boards and the fans on there, but in terms of the production philosophy and what's on there, even though they're not in the stands, are there more replays? Challenges are still a thing, even though fans aren't in the stands. Is that play a part into what you put on the board and what's being played on that thing?
Absolutely. So that was a big focus of ours too. It's like, we're not going to do obvious things like kiss cam or crowd shots. Right. Those are existent. We're not going to do dot races or shell games because no one's watching. We're also know the players aren't necessarily watching the board. They're warming up, getting ready to play baseball. But we want to put stuff there in the background, and in case they peek up there, it feels like normal. So we've built a hype video for each of our players. Also, when they come up to bat, we have a minute video that can play right before they lead off an inning. We've got pitcher reliever videos that we play almost every inning break. So no matter whenever a pitcher comes in, they get their own little highlight video. We've got rally videos completed. We do a bunch of MLB related stuff. Like I mentioned before, like the top 5 defensive plays of every day across the league the day before. We also do a longest home runs feature of the longest home runs that were hit the previous day, just from a baseball interest perspective. We mentioned the player playlist. So we reached out to players and said, hey, what are some songs you'd like to hear? We built some graphics and some signifying like, hey, this is Max Kepler's half inning. He picks the songs that are playing today. Mm-hmm. So things like that are what we're kind of really focusing on. We're not just doing stuff to do stuff. Our hope is that on the video boards, it's information that, or entertainment that at least the players might enjoy listening to, or maybe if they put a glance up there, they might see themselves.
Okay, a little bit more of a personal, customized touch that are catering to the players. Yes, they see themselves up there all the time in generic like hype videos, but because they are probably the sole audience that you're reaching to right now, unless it's the cardboard cutouts and or yourselves in the control room, it makes a lot of sense that you're going that way. So, Sam, before I let you go, I want to give you the opportunity to kind of highlight some key people on your staff, everyone or a select few you choose, and how proud you are of them for kind of, going through the season and making sure they're doing a great job, even though the circumstances are up against them.
Yeah, so there's definitely a couple people I want to do a shout out to. Jim Deal, our video manager, has been fantastic, not only figuring out some of the technical issues in the room in terms of these unique setups with, a world feed truck view and things like that. We don't have our own cameras, so we're obviously devoted to all the truck cameras we can get. So he's been a great job of that, in addition to building all those hype videos I mentioned earlier. Jeremy Loosebrock. So one benefit of being kind of away from the ballpark since March is all the graphics and the things we've developed over the last 6 months are the nicest in our terms that we've ever had them look, just because we've had the additional production time to put some of the finesse and the finishing touches on things. So despite only being able to do 60 games and no fans seeing our graphics, at least we have felt like we've made them look really nice with all the extra time we have. And then my two audio engineers, Steve Peterson and Trevor Chick, were the guys who, they probably have never watched baseball games as closely as they do now while they're doing the crowd sounds piece, because they used to just run the board. But they've taken that job responsibility, owned it, made it as pristine for them and as easy to work with as well. And I've had, very few complaints from people about how it's been running. So I give kudos to them for kind of taking the extra job and running with it. So.
Right. All right. Well, I commend the great work that you and your staff are doing. It's not easy, I'm sure, but you guys are making it as seamless as possible for someone that's watching on television. So, Sam, best of luck to you and the team. Stay safe. And I guess the Yanks and Twins will see each other in the playoffs again for like the 7th year in a row.
That's what we're hoping for. So hopefully we'll be playing baseball in October.
All right. Thanks, Sam. Stay safe.
Yeah, take care.